Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm here with David Irvine from MaidSafe, and we have Acharn here with us. He's our Scottish monk who's in Thailand, and the reason that prompted this was the CoinTelegraph article that I woke up to this morning, which I read and I was very surprised by because it it was very shocking to read that, and it seemed very inaccurate to me. And, I know that MaidSafe had applied for patents and stuff in the past, and it seemed like a very defensive move on my part for them. So I'm going to just let David respond, and he had responded in the comments too of the article, so you can read those as well. But I'm going to turn it over to David and welcome to the show and let you go, David.
Thanks, Jamie. That's good of you. Yeah, I just got a tweet early on about this, and it was quite interesting because it's about the only picture I've seen of me wearing a tie, which has caught my eye to begin with. I thought that's interesting. But then it just read, and I'm going to really want to attack the author of it. It just read as though someone had heard, "Oh, patent! I hate patents. They're horrible. This person's got a patent. Let's tell everybody that that's a horrible thing to do." So I'm just looking at the article just now. So it seems that quite strange because it was on maidsafe.org just before we came on air, and Nick's pretty much is running the business side of the company at the moment. He has actually been emailing the editor of that particular publication, and he's pretty amazed that they never contacted us for any chat at all. So it seems quite strange, but it brings up, I think, a bigger point. There's a point about patents, and we all have our opinion on patents or not patents. It's a bit like guns or no guns, or this kind of thing, or smoking or no smoking. It's something that everybody's going to have opinions on. So without getting into that, I mean, our patents are definitely defensive. They're not even ours. They belong to a charity. But I think it brings a much bigger thing. I've seen a couple of these sort of articles written about different projects. If we could change the way that journalism works for the Bitcoin community, because we're supposed to be free and open and not controlled by governments and whatnot, and to have basically articles that aren't well researched, I think is pretty poor. And it would be great, I think, if it would be fantastic. Obviously, I think you should speak to the people you're writing an article about. That's numero uno. But secondly, if we did actually have proper research journalism, there would be much less of this scam type stuff that goes on. Because people just sort of write scam about any project without any backup, and you see it about every project. Don't get me wrong, you see it all over the internet, Twitter or whatever. If somebody says blue, people attack them. If somebody says green, they get attacked for no apparent reason. But I think it's a really serious issue for the Bitcoin community, because I know that you guys in the World Crypto Net have spoken about this before, but there is a lot of people preying just now on folk that don't really understand everything that's going on. And it would be really good to investigate them properly and do proper investigative journalism and say, look, this is what we've found, this is what we asked the person, this is what they replied, now it's up to you. So I think that the bigger issue, and I seen that round about the time of when we did our crowd sale thing, there was all these things about, I'm an effing genius, these guys are stealing money and they're doing this and doing that and doing the next thing, which was all lies, and the people that were saying them eventually turned around and said, yeah, I managed to buy lots more SafeCoin because of that. And you think, well, they're just scamming everybody by calling projects scammers and stuff. So there's a bigger issue, and when Kashmir Hill actually interviewed me after it, after the whole crowd sale thing, which was, for us, we were breaking the water. I think we showed a lot of people how not to do some stuff, which I think that's good. But that was what I said to her at the time as well. When you see stories like this, it's not like you have to defend them, because it's like defending somebody says you've got horns or something. Well, I'm not defending that. That's a bit stupid. But the deeper issue is these type of articles and these type of people are actually manipulating or attempting to manipulate how people think about stuff. And because there's a lot of people that don't really know what's going on, you're going to get folk buying and selling stuff based on articles. And being the lazy human beings that we are, we're going to go to publications that we think are honest and true and think, well, that one says this isn't very good, so let's pull our money out of that and put it in something else.
Well, I think
And
that's a big
so
problem that we've seen with the mainstream media and why a
yeah,
lot of us have turned to alternative media and we've been looking for real truth. And now if we see these alternative media sources doing the manipulation stuff, it really discredits them.
I think so. I think it's very, very dangerous. In terms of the article itself, the comments and whatnot that I've made are they're pretty. They pretty much say as it is. I mean, I can go through how MaidSafe's configured as a business. It's configured in a very. I decided a lot of years ago to pretty much dedicate myself to providing this privacy, security, and freedom for everyone on the planet. So, and folks say, you know, how can you do that? How can you give everyone away and you work 7 days a week and you work all these hours and you've got an old battered van and you rent a house somewhere. And it's not difficult, because years ago folk went to war and got shot on day one and their life was over. I enjoy my life, so I'm not some kind of martyr, but I do work hard and I'm not driven by cash. And when you see things like that, you just think, I don't want to control anything. I don't want to monopolise anything. I don't want to stop innovation. The whole point of my existence is to ensure we get more innovation, because I firmly believe that we can cure cancer. I think we can cure cancer very easily if we let people get the access to the information and let that information come out. And the way that Safe Network is going is pretty much doing that. It's basically saying if you're a programmer, do some programming thing and you'll get paid directly. If you're a chemist, do some chemist thing and be paid directly. You don't need to go through large organizations. I think the world fails here slightly because we've got things like chemists and biologists and physicists and various people, and they're all on the bottom floor of these buildings, tied into a corner. I've been in investment meetings, actually, even for MaidSafe, which is another thing. People keep saying MaidSafe's got VC backing and all this sort of stuff. It's a load of bull. We don't have any VC backing. We've got investors, most of which are friends and family that know us. So things like our accountant, our lawyer, the staff, the landlord, basically people that will kick our head in if we do something wrong. And it's quite good to be surrounded by people who are actively invested in a business like that. But apart from these people that are investing in the business, then we've got these people who are invested in Safecoin, which again, it's the same thing again. You're surrounding yourself with people. Now, all of the staff, I think, in MaidSafe have got Safecoin. They all pretty much bought Bitcoin to buy the MaidSafe coin. But we're probably some of the lowest holders of it. People in that crowd sale, there was one person put in 900 Bitcoins or something. But there's a lot of people who are putting in 10 and 20 and 30 Bitcoins to buy the stuff. So again, we're surrounded by people who will actively make sure that we're doing the right thing and want to know that we're doing the right thing the whole time. So doing that and doing something like MaidSafe, which is a tremendously difficult piece of technology to both explain and to code, means that you have to spend your time split between talking to the community, making sure all the questions are answered, and then getting the code done. And that's when you see articles like that coming out and you think, well, all that's going to do now is distract us completely from doing the work and justify something that's not true. And I really hope that, that particular CoinTelegraph, I see you've got it in the screen there, I really hope that those people come to us and say, would you like to do a follow-up piece on this, and we'll actually speak to you and print something that clears it up. Or, as I say, I'm not necessarily looking to hang any authors or whatever. Everyone makes mistakes, there's no doubt about it, but I think in this case there's been a slip somehow, because we really need to be very, very accurate in what we're reporting. So
yeah,
hopefully that helps a bit.
This article was one they did on you, the same media outlet, CoinTelegraph, did on you back last April.
Yeah.
And I mean, that seemed more like a news piece.
Yeah.
And it was an actual interview with you. Whereas this one was just like throwing out accusations that was out there this morning. So that's why I really wanted to get you on, was to get your response to it. And I know Susan contacted me because she had some questions, and we got Susan from BitNation on here too. And so I just wanted to have her, because I thought her questions were legitimate that she'd asked, and I wanted to let her ask her questions too. So Susan, why don't you ask him what you were saying?
Is my camera on?
Hi.
No, your camera isn't working, David.
No, it isn't. No.
Weird.
Anyways, hi guys. Hi David. First of all, David, I want to say that I've followed MaidSafe for a long time, and I'm a big fan of what they're offering technology-wise. And I've been a victim of online FUD as well, so I definitely do not want to, this is not an attempt to slaughter you or anything, just to find out more information and have a better understanding. And yeah, I was really very, very concerned when I read the article, because essentially what you patented is the basic Bitcoin technology, I mean, to quote it straight out from the actual article, it says, let me read it out loud. Hold on a second. A method of storing data from a first node on a peer-to-peer network. The method includes creating a public and private key pair for a data item. The method also includes determining a hash value for the public key and assigning the hash value as a user identifier for those user of the node. The method also includes the public key within a distributed hash table of the peer-to-peer network. User identifier corresponds to the key for the public key within the distributed hash table. So that is really concerning. I mean, I read your response as well on CoinTelegraph, where you said, like, well, the patent was defensive and it's owned by a not by a corporation, but by a foundation. But that doesn't really make me feel more comfortable, because, I mean, a foundation is subject to be co-opted by whoever. Just by the virtue of being a foundation doesn't mean that you're all good, right? Like, just look at the Bitcoin Foundation, for instance, how they have been totally co-opted by financial interests, by private sector interests from a few big players in the space. And, so maybe it's just defensive, and, as you said, it's open source code, of course, but what if you, in 10 years' time, maybe there are some players out in the space you don't like, that doesn't suit your preference, and you suddenly start to, swing your patent around. Like, we have to trust you, a centralized entity, actually, not you in person, but the MaidSafe Foundation, to not do that, and I think that's extraordinarily concerning.
I totally agree with that. I think it's I could tell you a story about that, because I actually held all the patents in my name until I was able to split the company and give the employees the part of the company. And that was concerning because basically all investors had to totally trust that I just wouldn't go insane or something and sell them or do something with them. But it's a bit like I was saying to Jamie, it's a bit like, you know, if everybody's walking down the street with suits of armour and machine guns and actually shooting each other, and you say, I don't believe in this, I'm going to walk down in, you know, my swimming trunks, I'm not going to carry a gun or a suit of armour, you're going to get killed eventually. So you either have to have something that you can trust, or hopefully that you can trust, or have nothing, have no defence. And this is this is one of the reasons why there is so many sort of defensive, like Mozilla and Red Hat and these guys do some similar stuff as well. And it moves from, you can work with our stuff and not be protected by any patents because we've not got patents. But Apple or IBM or somebody could do a patent right around the edge of our code and prevent you moving forward. Or we patent it somehow and we try and make those patents available to everyone. Like put them through a foundation or whatever. Charities here it's not like a not-for-profit here. A charity in Scotland's it's a very prescribed and very tightly managed. It took us 18 months to set that foundation up. And I had to explain what education was actually, and that took about 6 months to say what we meant by education. So you either have to have a protection that is a protection, or go without protection and just hope that nobody closes you down or shuts you down. And I think that's the choice that you've got to make. I mean, you can go completely to the outside and just say, I'm not going to recognise any government, or something like that, and that's probably valid, but it's also, to me, it's an evolution. We know now that patents and some things are bad. Company law is extremely bad. Actually, company law itself is extremely bad. We're getting this thing foisted on us over here, this TTIP agreement, which means that some American corporations are going to have the ability to basically attack European companies using American company law now, as well as our own. So the actual corporate law, as well as the patents, are all dangerous things. Now, we either work within those laws and work within the defence of patents, or completely go to the outside of them. And this is, I think, part of the evolution. And you see, nothing evolves by just doing a binary switch. You don't just go switch, you're a fish, the next minute you're a frog, the next minute you're an ape. You know, things evolve, so you have to be able to try very hard to evolve your business as effectively as you can, but with reality as well. So this is where I see that, you know, there was a JP Morgan thing, say the bit you just read out, you know, when you look at it, that's quite like Bitcoin does, you know, getting hashes and keys and all this kind of stuff. It's better that some of us have something to protect against that kind of JP Morgan type stuff than just let them go ahead and patent things, because fair enough, a charity, you could say, could go crazy and attack everyone. It wouldn't be able to attack the code base, it's GPL. It would be able to attack round about the code base, which is where the danger is. So this is where you've got to, I think, work very, very much within the law and within the current defence mechanisms and the way that the system currently works, but change it, evolve it, make it better, let folks see there is a better way to run your company. Don't own all your shares, give them all away. Make everyone equal in the business. So it doesn't matter if they're, I don't know, doing C programming or doing accounting or doing whatever, they should all just get the same. That's the way that we're working. They should all own the business. These are things that help us progress, but the thing that will help us progress more than anything is giving people access to information, and give them access to real information, and allow them to use that information and build projects for themselves and companies for themselves. And to be able to, this is where Bitcoin and whatnot comes in, and Safe and Ethereum and all these different projects. There's one phenomenal thing about computing and the network, and when it's done properly, there is no borders. A piece of data going along the wire doesn't recognise a border. It doesn't recognise the international business laws or the business laws of certain countries or whatever. If it's done correctly, no one will be able to be oppressed into not setting up a business, not like doing a bit of code or a piece of art or a piece of music. Or digitally transferred assets are by far the easiest to imagine here. But someone in any part of Africa or Asia or whatever on the Safe network could create something and then earn themselves a lot of SafeCoin. If they could actually buy something with it as well, that would be great so that they could live in that world. But moving towards that, that ultimate goal of complete freedom is something that we have to do. And you know, I'm Scottish. I'm never scared to a fight, but there's no need to fight sometimes. Sometimes, rather than fighting, just evolve and educate, and evolve and educate, and evolve and educate, and say, yes, our goal is never to have. And if you see anything I've written about patents, the #1 priority for us is never, ever, ever prevent innovation. Never prevent it, and always fight people who try and prevent it. So if someone went to attack, say, Bitcoin with a patent, and one of our patents covered an area of that, we would go out for Bitcoin, we'd go out for Ethereum or storage or any of these other things and prevent any attack. Because if you stop innovation, you stop evolution. And I kind of think, you know, these people that stop innovation in larger companies with their patents, and you see what Samsung and Apple are doing with each other, hell mend them, because see if they let innovation happen, probably we'd have cancer cures. Now, one of those people will die of cancer, and they were the ones that were stopping innovation, the very thing that could have saved them. So my core goal is promote innovation, make it real, make it. If you're able to create something and that something's of value to the world, you should be able to be immediately paid for that without going through some organization and some kind of marketing thing and some kind of PR nonsense. You should just directly, if you're good at painting, you should get paid for painting. If you're good at art, you should be paid for art. Good at developing. And it can be measured if you develop a program or develop a song or a movie. It can be easily measured how much value that was to the world, because it's how many folk used it, how many folk watched it, how many folk listened to it. Those things are very simple to do. Now, if you've got like an autonomous network, all that you do is put the rules into that network. That's all you do. Then it will matter very little about patents and trademarks and design stuff and all the rest of it. It will matter what folk find useful. Even to the point where maybe I just copy your song completely and change a couple of bits of it and people prefer the one I've just done. Well, that's fine. You know, because that's the world, that's the way things are. So the core thing is not to stop or to always promote this innovation. And if anybody tries to stop us promoting innovation or tries to stop someone that we know of not innovating, we will go after them. But we will never ever go after somebody with a patent to stop them developing something or bring, because I don't want any child I meet in the street to die of some disease that could have been cured. And that's literally what we're doing when we stop people innovating.
So
Can
that, I got disconnected there. So
yeah, I mean, David, I don't doubt you have the best of intentions, but it's still, I'm sure you do, you know, but I'm convinced you do. But it still does not stop the fact that we have to trust the MaidSafe Foundation. And the MaidSafe Foundation, I mean, you may very well have picked the absolutely most kindest, ideologically aligned people in the world, but who knows who they are going to be in 5 years, in 10 years. We're still left now at trusting a centralized organization, you know, to not for a patent around that is essentially Bitcoin.
No, I know that I know what you're saying, that you have to trust an organization or whatever, and that's
Why
true.
should we trust the foundation?
I don't think you should trust anybody or anything if possible. You shouldn't need to. That's the part of the issue. At the moment, the problem is. Sorry.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but can you please clarify? Like, so you have the patent, okay? So the only thing that prevents you from actually using that patent are the internal guidelines you have established.
For the foundation, it would be. For the foundation, it is, but we're actually, we look continually, and I know Nick spends some time doing this, looking at ways of making statements, public statements that can actually be validly held, to say this patent here is now non-existent or whatever, but it's not as straightforward as that, and there is things, because we've talked to, the Google patent defensive thing, and Mozilla's got one as well. There's a few of these about, and we actually pushed for it with the Bitcoin community through, I can't remember the name of it wasn't Corba, but something like that.
But the Bitcoin is subject
to... they're trying to create this thing, and that's what we said, look, we'll just dump all our patents in there, and if that's held by multiple organisations, then that's going to be better than just one, and hopefully they don't all go mental at once. But that's never came to anything. So I think it's one of the areas as well. I mean, hopefully we get rid of the requirement for patents or protection of that kind pretty soon. There's a few issues I have with it though, because say it took you your whole life to work on a cure for the flu or something like that. Somebody needs to pay you somehow. Somebody needs to be able to reward that, and these are the things that I'm constantly looking at as well. How do you pay someone for a whole life's worth of work which actually could come to nothing? Because we have to be able to do that. But patents originally were supposed to be that. Yeah, well, patents originally were supposed to be that at least you'll get your food and look after your family if you've invented something. They've turned into something much more monstrous, though. But
that's immoral. I mean, first of all, patenting the work of something you haven't invented. You haven't invented Bitcoin, or the blockchain technology, and I mean, even without enforcing that patent, obviously, but potentially blocking a huge creative free market for making a living, just because a few people who did the legal paperwork at one point in time got a stamp of approval from a monopoly on violence, a government. I mean, I see that as a very moral move. So those people may benefit from it. Like, that's also at the cost of the greatest revolutionary freedom technology that potentially can benefit billions of people, just not in a monetary way, but in other aspects as well, like governance or entrepreneurship and so forth.
Yeah, I'm not sure that patents really work that way. I know over here you've got to actually prove that you've invented something. But when you think nobody invents anything, everybody builds on previous things anyway. There's that great big philosophical debate about, do you discover or invent? But I don't think anybody's patented Bitcoin, because you couldn't, because the paper's out.
Well, I mean, I mean, this is what is actually said. What I read initially, like, I don't want to bore everybody through rereading it, but you basically patented, blockchain-based peer-to-peer technology.
Yeah, in 2007. That's when the original date of that thing would be. So Bitcoin wasn't about there, so it's not as if you could copy anything. But that's what I'm talking about. This is where, when we were doing the patents, we said, we'll patent as wide an area as we can because this is quite a new area of technology. And the idea for that was to put an umbrella around the technology to say, the big companies don't get in here. We don't play this patent game with them. We patent wider than the code base. There's no point, you can't patent a code base anyway, it doesn't work. Or not in Europe anyway. So the point of that is, like in 2007, I went away for 6 months or it was 8 months, to Brno in the Czech Republic and just wrote all these patents in the design. And the reason for it was, as we were moving forward, if you provide a platform, and it's like, see if HTTP had done that, it would have been better because you wouldn't have all these one-click nonsense patent stuff going about. And fair enough, we'd have had to trust Tim Berners-Lee or something, but I would prefer to do that or trust CERN. So that's what I mean. You either go completely unprotected or go protected. So if you're protected, then that's good. But it's also, I think, the realization that the protection that a patent gives you is extremely limited. It'll be good enough to stop other folk doing it and then using the patent law to wipe you out, but there's lots of other ways they can do that. But the point of it is protect yourself, move forward, get the technology implemented, get onto a different way of working, make sure that the world can work in this better way without having to require patents. And I think it's, as I said, it's just down to education. It's down, like, could we educate people to know that they don't need to do this? It seems like a common business way of working, and this goes beyond patents. You're a successful business if you can kill your competition. That's what makes you successful. In today's MBA-driven world, you know, in the Harvard Business Review, you'd be seen as a god if you could put people out of business and succeed. And we have to educate people. That's not the way to work, and that's the way patents are used just now. It's patents used to say, I tell you what, I'm not going to let you do that bit of work because I'm going to stop you with this piece of paper. What we're doing is we're saying, do that piece of work. We've got a piece of paper that will protect you from the lunatics. And you do have to trust someone along the way, and that's just empirical in the way that the law's configured at the moment, because you either have a body or something that you can trust, or if you could do something like make a public statement or get a bunch of people to all put their patents together and say we're going to protect a much wider area, but we're not going to enforce these, we're not going to stop people inventing, then you have a better situation. But it's an intermediary point to me to going beyond patents. But it's not just beyond patents, it's like what I said in the comments. We've got these international pods now, Montreal and San Francisco and whatnot, and we try our best to help them to put us out of business. Because if they're better at it than we are, they should be doing it. Because again, I don't want to see a child that dies of some disease that could have been cured because we're trying to say MaidSafe's ours and we're, you know, the stars of this thing, all the rest of it. And it's the exact same situation with patents. It's the exact same thing. Encourage competition. Encourage people to compete. Now, the Bitcoin community is a bit kind of funny this way because they'll say, oh, we'll just fork Ethereum or we'll fork MaidSafe or we'll fork. You could fork the Linux kernel if you want, any time you want. You know, if something's very complicated and hard, you're probably you're going to have to do something more than press fork on GitHub to copy it. But there's nothing wrong with doing that. But so we've got there's kind of infantile way of looking at it in the community at some stage, because you can't just go fork and then it's yours. You've got to do the work. But at the same time, we should be promoting that. We should be promoting, look, if you can do MaidSafe better than I can do MaidSafe, I should give you whatever money I've got to do it. You know, if I think you can do that. Because this is the movement, moving from a business as some success. The measure of success just now is how much money you've got. I could go down there and rob the Royal Bank of Scotland and I'd be seen as one of the most successful businessmen could say, here's a big pile of cash. Or I could go and save a couple of folk from being killed, and you wouldn't be successful. So this is where the education part of what I'm talking about comes in. You educate people that success doesn't mean profit. Profit doesn't mean money. You know, it's, have we moved forward? Has the world moved forward? Is less people dying? Is less people getting killed? Less people getting robbed? That's business. Is so the patents and whatnot are linked to that way of thinking. It's like, is there legal things that I could do to stop competition? And it's not only legal things to stop competition. We have to go beyond that and say, if you want to be successful at business, why are you in business? And anybody that's in business for money should get out of business. We should be in business to help our species, humanity, to move forward. That should be the only reason to be in business. It's the only point of being in business. And to me, that means stop starving people, stop killing folk, stop telling folk lies, stop this propaganda news stuff. But that's all exactly the same situation. That's why I keep saying education. We have to say to folk, you're in business for a vision. Whatever your vision is, it doesn't matter who does it. It's like when we're trying to cure polio or smallpox, you know, who cares who does it? Who cares the name of the person that comes up with that chemical? We've just got to get it. And however we get it, we should be helping each other. We shouldn't be putting folk out of business. And, you know, I've said before, you know, it's like when you're like in the 60s, if you're in the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King came along, you thought, he's a really good speaker, I should knock him in the head with a hammer because I want to be the best. No, get the best people doing the best thing. So there's a lot more to the whole. It's not only the patent thing, it's the business thing. It doesn't mean patents are right. I think everybody that I know that's relatively sensible knows patents have gone from, the idea for a patent originally was let the inventor invent and pay him something, or her something. And it's morphed like the same way as DDT was supposed to kill mosquitoes. It didn't work. It actually did the complete opposite. It stifled innovation as opposed to helping innovation. But it's still there. It's still there, and we have to push our way through it. Now, so the only choice at the moment really is, there's three choices, I think, realistically. One is take out a very wide patent, protect your code base beyond anybody attacking it if you can. Two, somehow publish the technology in a way that nobody can patent it. Now, that's more difficult than it sounds because different countries have different laws about what is an actual publication that will be recognised as. The Patent Office will definitely look at it. IEEE and stuff is a place that they do look. But you've got to pay a lot of money then to join IEEE and then publish a paper there is a bit of a nightmare. It's much, much easier to get a patent. Another way is just to say, well, we'll not have any. You know, and it's not we'll not have any because they're evil. Everybody knows they're evil. All those three people, all those three groups know that patents are broken. But you've got to make the choice just now. And I would hope that in the next 5-10 years we don't make that choice. We actually don't have these things. I'd like to see immediately anybody that's prevented from building something or selling something, like Samsung aren't allowed to sell phones somewhere and then Apple's not allowed to sell theirs. That, to me, immediately should go to court and be prevented. We shouldn't be allowed to do that kind of thing. So patents are, without a doubt, a problem, but business structure and measures of success are part of the same issue. They're part of the same mindset, mentality of this crush the competition, crush the and we just need to flick that round on its head. And I think this is what part of the Bitcoin, because you see this between different projects, oh, we're the best, we're better than this, you know, our 3-letter acronym's better than your 3-letter acronym, so we're going to win. It's not about that. And then folk have platitudes, yeah, we all work together. We don't work together. We hardly work with any project. We're far, far too busy. But at the same time, you don't want to go out and kill projects. You don't want other projects to fail, or if they do fail, you want to see why they failed properly. What did they do technically wrong that made them fail? And have other projects, I think, do what we're doing. Try and create your own competition. You know, if somebody took out MaidSafe in a year or two, say, who knows, Montreal could take over, folk in China could take over. You know, there's all these other organisations that are potentially competitors that they just keep the whole thing going. And this is, to me, a much, much healthier mindset and way forward. And focusing on the patents are worth focusing on. They're definitely an issue, but there's a much bigger issue. It's like I was saying to someone recently, you know, it's like worrying in your house going, oh, good God, you know, there's a leaf on the window, it's terrible, I have to take care of this leaf and the roof's missing. But you don't see it because you're looking at the leaf. The picture's a much bigger, I think it's a much bigger picture. And it's great if we can say, you know, that's a horrible thing, so we'll not do it. Well, this is where the kind of evolution thing, I think, kicks in, that, yeah, let's not do that, but let's work it properly. Let's get there. You know, you can't just win a battle in an infinitesimal amount of time. And I don't always believe either that you play the game by the other guy's rules. I don't think you need to do that either completely, but I do think you need to be completely cognizant of what is the current environment. And the current environment in Scotland, for instance, or the environment in Scotland in 2007, we wouldn't have got a penny if we hadn't had patents, because that's the way it worked those days. There was a program called Dragon's Den. In America, it was quite different. Now, we set up the first Fab Lab in Scotland, with the foundation did, which was the Negroponte thing from MIT, where people could go into a building and you've got all this equipment, like I've got it lying here, and whatever you can dream, you can build. You know, and these are very successful things, and they're all over the world. And I met Mr. Negroponte down in Manchester, and he was saying, oh, patents are the most evil thing on the planet, we don't allow them at MIT. And I said, yeah, that's great. That's great if you've got funders and what that will appreciate that, and they've moved forward a bit, maybe beyond what they are in the UK. Germany's different, France is different. So being cognizant of what's around you and what you can use and what you can take with you to make the changes that we want to in society, I think is very important as well. And I also noticed that in the Bitcoin community, there's a kind of global view which looks very much just like the US. I know you're not in the US, but a lot of things are measured by the climate or the economic climate of particular countries. A lot of it is America. And we're talking about here things which are global, things which transcend and cross all the borders. So that's sort of my opinion, that we have to have this much bigger view. Understand that there's a vision, there's a common vision, and figure out how to get it. We'll all take different trips. Some of us might have patents, some of us might try publications, some of us will try without patents or whatever. But if we're all going down that road and trying to get there, that's brilliant. I don't know, somebody asked me recently, would you take out patents today if you were doing this again? And I was saying, probably not, because today we've got things like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, crowdfunding. There's various other ways if you need to get a team and get cash together that you can go and do that. There's also ways to get teams potentially where you don't need to get cash, you know, but at the same time, if there's a lot of work to get done, you need these people working 18, 19 hours a day. You've got to give them food somehow. So now, I don't think I would have been so keen to get patents, because we're moving on a little bit. We've moved on a little bit more from where we were, but I'm very glad that we did. I'm really glad that we did, but is it the only way? I don't think it's the only way.
I guess a lot of people in the voluntary community and stuff are, you know, there's a big argument on whether intellectual property is valid or not. And I think that's part of what the article was about, and whether I think that was a lot of the concern. And I guess that's probably would be the most direct question, is if you think intellectual property is valid.
No. No. I think intellectual property is extremely valuable, and I think it should be protected by humanity for what it is. It's more knowledge, it's greater knowledge. The quandary I have about it is what I was saying to Suzanne. I would love if we could come up with a system, and I think what we need to do in our own projects is, at the moment, you've got university researchers who could spend their whole life, maybe even in tenure or whatever, maybe doing nothing, and maybe doing something fantastic. When we start measuring everything in any currency, whatever it is, cryptocurrency or just a kind of capitalist kind of mentality of you must profit from this, that part becomes idiomatic for me, because if someone's potentially bonkers with some crazy ideas about creating a flying saucer or something, maybe we should still be paying them. And it's that, I think that's what the patent thing was trying to do to begin with, is how can you reward people, at least along the way, to say, well, you'll come up with some things throughout your life, and you know, if you do, we can reward you. And they were trying to put a value on it. It just went crazy. So to answer the question, I think intellectual property is extremely valuable to humanity. How we reward it is absolutely not through the patent system. But we don't really have a perfectly good answer for how you do reward this longer term thing. The interesting thing is, generally speaking, you know, you get something like a cancer cure and people say that'll be worth a fortune. But see, when you dig down to the person who came up with the cancer cure, or you know, Einstein in 1905 with his general relativity thing, they're not bothered about the money. They're bothered about living, they're bothered about keeping their family alive and having a relatively good house. But they're not bothered about, can I make hundreds of billions of pounds from this? Because true researchers are chasing a true vision. You know, Einstein was worried about the cosmos and, you know, this kind of stuff, and how did everything interact with each other. And, you know, the guy who, I can't remember, the guy who did the polio thing, he just gave it all away. Folk were amazed at that. But all the great inventions, if you look down into those, like Apple coming up with some iPhone thing or whatever, if you look way into that company, there'll be someone there that does it because they love it. And those are the people, we have to be able to pull them out somehow and say, look, don't worry about it, you're going to get rewarded, just keep doing what you love, but you don't need to bother about all the other crap. You don't need to start a company, have a marketing company, a PR company, all the rest of this, accounting. And
The problem we see with that, though, or I shouldn't say we, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but the problem I see with that always is, if you guarantee somebody money, if you're not paying them personally, is you always end up pointing a gun at somebody else saying, you are going to be paying money the rest of your life to pay this guy because he had an idea 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's where I talk about this bigger picture, and it's like the Orion project and various things, resource-based societies. If somehow people, and I'm not meaning communism, but if people were rewarded effectively so that people did the job that they actually wanted to do, like if you want to, I would still do the safe thing. I would do a lot more robotics if I could get the time, but if you allow people to do the thing they love, they'll just do it anyway. And we see people now, and it's like you have to pay them to make them work, and you don't. You have to pay them and then force them to do something they don't want to do. And there's a great video by Dan Pink on TED about this, and it's bonuses, money and stuff. And if you're doing creative work and you offer people more money, they'll actually become less creative very, very quickly. And it's been proven over and over again that this extra cash and bonuses and reward system kills creativity. It can make people who are doing mechanically repetitive jobs a bit more productive, because but you're not having to engage the creative part of your brain. Type job, you can become more productive. But the interesting aspect of that is there's a salary point. Whereas if you're doing the job you're loving it, that was a few years ago, it was $70,000. Now we're trying to introduce that into MaidSafe as soon as we ever start making money, which I hope we will. And that's the kind of happy point. Beyond that, you don't get any happier. So bankers, massive bonuses and all this are completely irrelevant. So at this happy point, say $70,000, so just pay everybody $70,000 and tell them to do whatever job they feel like doing. And the jobs that nobody wants to do...
Where's that money come from, though?
It comes from... I think if you look at the way that money's distributed just now, you've got the 1% owning 80% of the thing and everything like that, and we've got folk in the UK, well, we've got the highest paid bankers in the world, and we keep telling our people, oh, we've got to pay them that much or they'll go somewhere else. And where else can they go? This is the highest pay they'll get. But they've got like 300 and 400 times the average salary. So and the other thing is, if you get people doing the job that they love, they're going to do a fantastic job. I mean, some of the guys that we've got working with is like...
So you're talking about wealth redistribution?
It's almost like interest redistribution. The wealth becomes irrelevant. After this 70,000 a year, all that you can do is you can maybe afford a cocaine habit or something like that, but there's no real much more happiness in it. So it's not a kind of communist approach at all. It's more of a try and get people doing what they want to do, because some people want to sew, some people want to make carpets, some people want to paint, some people want to... And there will be people that want to cure disease, there'll be people that want to do physics, there'll be people that want to do maths, there'll be people that want to progress the world, but they're all not able to because they need more money, so they become a banker or they become, one of the accountants, the Big Four. But if we can actually look at the way things are done, I mean, MaidSafe, we've been through lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff, and I believe that we've got now, I know that some of the guys tell me if they weren't getting paid, they'd still be there. They'd still actually be there. But obviously they need to look after their family. So this is what you want. If you want the people in jobs that they want to do, and that's where I see the whole thing with SAFE starting, because there's hundreds of people or thousands or millions want to do development work. Just let them and get them paid directly. That's the beginning of that. And if we can get to the point where at least they're getting that happy amount. So, not that somebody creates Angry Birds and gets $1 billion. Somebody creates Angry Birds and they'll get a, smallish amount of cash compared to $1 billion. But that should get spread about. So they should be saying, well, do you know what? See if rather than me taking this $1 billion, if I gave it to 10 million people, if I gave them their salary, they'll all create other Angry Bird type things, and the whole thing lifts. It's a bit like, I've said to people before, if you're striving to be that single plant in the field that grows taller than all the rest, you'll just get blown over. But see if you encourage the plants round about you to grow at the same height, the wind won't blow you over anymore. So it's not having such a great big differential between salaries is one thing, but the more important thing is to stop people doing the job that they really want to do. Make sure that people are doing what they want. And it's a question I ask people quite a lot. If every single job on the planet had the exact same salary, what would you do? And then they'll think about it, and it's very hard to answer that question. And I'll tell them that's what you should be doing.
Susan has a question. Go ahead, Susan. Your mic is muted.
Yeah, so just to get back to the basics, I mean, so the short answer is you do believe in IP. Is that correct? Yes or no?
I believe in IP. I believe that IP is a thing but the ownership of it is humanity, not a person.
Okay, so the reason why I don't believe in IP is that I think humanity wouldn't have survived with it, if we wouldn't pass on for free the information on how to make fire from one generation to another when we're living in caves, and after that,
I
the
think we're
information
agreeing, actually, Suzanne.
a wheel and the information on all the basic things, we wouldn't be anything near. And that's something that got me into Bitcoin, just the fact that it was free and open innovation for all. So I think it's a direct threat to the entire humanity, actually.
I think we're saying the same thing. I think you're associating IP with IP law. I'm not. I'm saying that we should be encouraging folk to add to the intellectual property of humanity. You could say it like, yes, don't believe in IP, but I believe in coming up with new ideas if you want, if that's easier. But IP doesn't equal patents, and it doesn't equal copyrights and trademarks and whatnot. These are all the industries that are built around monetizing something like that, so they put a label on it in a contract.
But it's the same thing. It strangles innovation because you may get a lawsuit, if you do it.
It does.
And that's horrible. And it's the worst form of strangling innovation. It's not because you're competing because you're better. It's because you have patented through administrative process through a government at some point in life an idea which in this case you did not actually come up with, and it's strangling innovation for everyone else, and we just have to again trust your goodwill to not strangle that innovation based on what you said, that, oh, well, it's good corporate governance and it's trusted individuals and so forth. How are we supposed to know that? How are we supposed to trust that? You can very well.
We're actually agreeing. We're actually agreeing. I'm not saying that intellectual property owned by any person or corporation is valid in any way. I don't think that's the way forward. I don't believe that that's the way forward. I don't think it's good. At the moment, the rules are such that, that's the three things I outlined, you can either ignore them, try and publish some other way, or get a patent and make sure that it's in as trusted a way as you can. In terms of believing in intellectual property, I do believe in the strict term intellect has got a value, and it's something that we should promote, and it's something that we should make sure that we keep creating more and more and more intellectual property. Intellectual property is the very first guy that started a fire. That's intellectual property. It's just nobody could patent it or do something. So we've just destroyed the creation of this intellect and the mankind being able to grow the intellect that they require by putting patents and stuff. So we should be very, very, very clear. I don't believe in patents, I don't believe in trademarks, and I certainly don't believe in design, whatever they're called, patents. So, no, I don't think you can contract any of that stuff, and I don't think it should become a tradable asset. But I do believe that intellect, if you like, maybe take the word property off it, is something that's extremely valuable. Extremely valuable. But I don't believe at all that what we've done with the patent system or the whole IP law side of things has got value today. I don't think it has. I'd like to see it disappearing, but it's not disappeared yet, but it's part of what we should. I think it's not even just the crypto community and Bitcoin community and MaidSafe community that's looking to take patents away. I think the world in general now has realised more that these things don't really. The European Union had a 7-hour conference on it just a few months back, which I unfortunately watched, and they're trying to change it, but it's this broken thing that they can't really change. But I think the way that the world's going is we won't have these things anyway. These things are going to have to disappear, because if they don't disappear, we'll actually go backwards as a species. We won't be able to innovate, because the whole patent thing isn't really inventors anymore anyway, it's corporates. So you don't see such and such has got patent, and you'd see Apple has got a patent, or IBM, or Microsoft, or whatever, and these guys are patenting at ferocious, absolutely ferocious pace. I mean, and I've seen how they work, and it's pretty horrible, because you can create a patent and then you can put a bunch of patents round about it in a really sort of sneaky way, so you end up with something that's really hard to break. But don't get me wrong, I'm 100% saying patents are a very bad thing. But I think the world, I think in general, I think if you ask people in the street nowadays, they would say the same thing. Yeah, they are a bad thing. But they're there. You know, I also think guns are a really bad thing as well, but they're there too. And, you know, if everybody was shooting everybody else, then I'd probably have a gun as well until we could get rid of them. But so this is just my way of working. It's do the best you can with what you've got. I mean, there's no point doing I was going to say King Canute, but that's a whole farce of a story anyway, because he did that to prove that he couldn't turn the tide round. But it's quite easy to take a stance way over to the side and say, well, I'm just going to not get involved and do any of this stuff at all. But at the same time, it's also valid, I think, to say, well, I'm going to accept what's there just now, accept the corporate law, accept company law, accept patent law and all the rest of it, and work with it, but work to change this. I think they're both valid ways forward. I don't think one's right and one's wrong, or one's, you know, evil and one's not evil, or whatever. I think they've both got their problems, because if you ignore the patents, and JP Morgan, for instance, took out a Bitcoin patent, say, if they could have done that, and then crippled the Bitcoin community, that wouldn't have been good. So it'd be good to say Bitcoin didn't have a patent, that's brilliant, but it wouldn't be brilliant if it got killed off because some big corporation patented it. That would not be brilliant. You know, so this is what I mean. Just now we have to, it's not really playing the game, it's taking everything that's there and using it to your best advantage. You know, and I think that's really valid, and I think you've got to be brave to do that. It's like I'd say when people talk about charity, I say, well, the best people in charity are the ones who can be given food for 9 children, be presented with 10 children, one of which will die when you don't feed it, and feed the 9, and let the 10th one die. That's the real charitable person. So to me, it's, you have to make tough decisions. You've got to be tough enough to make the tough decisions, but the most important thing to be tough about is your core vision. Now, if your core vision is to give everybody in the world privacy, security, and freedom of everything to do with their digital life, you're going to get there. You're going to achieve that, or you'll die trying to achieve it. And there's certain things we have to do. We have to work within certain parameters based on our geography or whatever, where we are at the moment. And that's just the way the world is configured just now. But as things move on, borders should start coming down. They should start disappearing. These things should start to vanish. But they won't vanish because we ignore them. They'll vanish because we push them out. Patents are the same. They won't vanish because we ignore them. But I certainly don't want our project or any other project near us to vanish because somebody else got a patent. Absolutely not.
But it still doesn't answer the basic question. Why should we trust the MaidSafe Foundation to not enforce those patents? And how, okay, so you say you are for intellectual property to protect inventors, but you did not invent peer-to-peer technology, you know? And so you are not the inventors.
It was not patented peer-to-peer technology.
Huh?
It was not patented peer-to-peer technology. They're very strict in the UK that you can't patent something.
I mean, it's, the patent stated is extraordinarily broad. It could. Yeah,
but see, the patent, I could write a patent.
The patent is
brown hair, and it doesn't mean I'm inventing brown hair.
It could. Sorry, excuse me.
You can write anything you want in a patent. You can put anything you want. Some of our patents are 120 pages. I could write that you've got brown hair in that patent. Easily. That doesn't
Yeah,
mean
but that's what
you're around here.
is very broad, right? So that was exactly my point. So yeah, you can write whatever you want in a patent. I mean, you can patent fresh air, if you want to. But
what is patented is the claims you've got. They should be very precise and specific. The claims. See the body of a patent. It's almost irrelevant. The way that works, the description should be apt enough that someone versed in the art can implement the claims that you make in a patent. So, see, like if you just take a bit of a patent and then show somebody, oh look, that's not what somebody's patented. You have to actually look at the claims of a patent, see what's patented. So there's huge amounts of confusion over all that sort of stuff as well. But yeah, I don't think anybody could patent peer-to-peer networks. You wouldn't be allowed to.
well, I mean, the definition is sort of broad enough that potentially you can enforce it
But that's not a claim in the patent.
Non-related projects and inventions, actually.
Yeah, but it's not a claim in the patent, so it's not a patent. That part of the body of the patent is not the patent at all. Only the claims are the patent. See,
okay, so what you're saying is that it's more detailed further on.
Yeah, generally in a patent you'll find that there's like in a title, then an abstract, then a description, then diagrams, and then claims. And it's the claims that actually are the things that you're really patenting. These are the things that you say you've invented, these claims. So the body of it will be. And patents they're a horrible thing. If you're an engineer, they're a horrible thing to write because you don't say 1 + 1 = 2. You could say something like 1 and something like another 1 may in some cases also equal something like 2. So they're very broad. The patent terminologies, and this is another problem with the patents, but patent attorneys make patent terminology so broad that they're trying to say we own this great big sphere of IP and we're not going to let anybody use it. But they also try to use the wording in such a way that they can drop bits of it if it appears that it's been challenged. So patents are pretty hard to do if you're an engineer, because as an engineer you're generally very specific. But with a patent you do a lot of comma probablys and comma maybes and that kind of stuff. So the way that like bits of the patent, like what that article's got, you'd be as well cut and pasting anything. You know, I could cut and paste anything into any of our patent bodies, anything whatsoever. You know, a couple of pages of War and Peace, and honestly, it would go through. You know, that's just the way they work. The claims, though, if you make patent claims in the UK Patent Office, they're unbelievably. You can't patent something that's a software program, and that's defined as something that a human could also achieve given enough time. You're not allowed to patent those kind of things. You're not allowed to patent things like voting systems or crypto cash systems in the UK. You're not allowed to patent anything to do with cash. It's extremely strict and prescribed. So that doesn't make them right, though. It just makes the understanding of how patents are created is pretty much irrelevant. The core principle of the patent is, I think, what we're talking about, is that these things don't achieve what they were set out to achieve, and they were set out to achieve something which is actually valid and viable, which is reward people for adding to society's intellectual property. You know, that's what they were there for. It's like, could you solve the next problem in physics, or could you solve the next problem in, I don't know, cleaning chimneys or making light bulbs or something, and rewarding those people. That's still a valid thing to look to try and achieve, is to reward people who are spending their time thinking about the problems that nobody else is wanting to or being able to that point in time. So that's still a valid thing, and I can see patents I dislike as much as anybody that's, I think, got any semblance of sense. I think we all dislike patents pretty much, but the problem still remains of rewarding the innovators, inventors, or whatever it is, how do you reward them? And that's really one of the things that with the Safe Network we're really trying to do is say, just if you're good at code, do a bit of code, and if it's good and people use it, you'll just get paid. And that's a step in the right direction, but it's not the big picture. There is a much bigger issue of how do you reward people, and I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier on, is ultimately give them the job that they want to do. Let them do what they love doing. Like, don't have folk, sitting doing a job that they're wanting to go home at night. They should not be doing that. They should be doing what they love doing. So it's a big change, but it's all part of the same parcel, I think.
Well, Susan, doesn't that kind of fit in? You're doing a test project with a guaranteed wage or something, aren't you?
Sorry, would you mind repeating that, Jamie?
Aren't you doing a project with a guaranteed wage, a voluntary system with a guaranteed wage?
Oh yeah, we have the basic income.co app, which basically is a voluntary type of taxation. I guess that's a bit of an oxymoron since it can't really be taxation if it's voluntary. But let's say a transfer fee, right? So people can choose to opt in and pay that transfer fee, and that gets redistributed to your network. So you can basically choose that, let's say if you had a car accident or something and you're out of money because you paid hospital bills, then you can choose to only receive. If you have a surplus because, you sold your company or inherited some money or got a pay raise, whatever, you can choose to only give, or which I assume most people choose is to both give and receive pretty much all the time, right? So basically it's based on your purchases, and so you pay like a little bit of extra on every purchase you make, but it's entirely voluntary, obviously, and it's based on your own social network and who you choose or not to choose to include into that system. So it's a bit like a mutual insurance system, which I'm hugely in favor of, It's not just because I'm a libertarian anarchist that I'm opposed to financial redistribution. I think financial redistribution is great as long as it's 100% voluntary and does not involve the state.
That'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm curious about it myself. Yeah, and it sounds more like insurance type deal than a government type thing. It's the BitNation. The BitNation thing's a bit confusing with the nation thing in there, but it's not really about forcing or something on people. It's more about voluntary cooperation.
Right. I mean, the definition nation means, if you look it up on Wikipedia, I don't have it right in front of me, but it basically means a voluntary assembly of people gathered together because of shared culture, interest, language, something. And so it's very broad as a definition. And that's why I choose nation and not state in the name.
Yeah, and Susan put the link here. It's basicincome.co that you can find out more information about that project. And we're going on a little over an hour, David. I think, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share about your response to this article and about MaidSafe in general?
No, I think the article, the only response I would say for the article is that it would be nice for the author to contact us now and then maybe do a follow-up piece on this article and just present all the facts that are there, rather than like what. I think it's really bad if it's really bad for any journalist to write an article without reaching out to who they're writing it about. It's not as if MaidSafe or in fact, I don't think any of the crypto projects are very difficult to get hold of. I know I generally am because I'm trying to kind of just do the code, but we've got a pretty active community, and the people in the office are very open to speaking to folks. So I don't think it's difficult for these journalists to actually do a bit more effective journalism than what they're doing. And as I said, I would really love to see them going deeper, much, much deeper, you know, looking, like, turning over every stone in all these projects and saying, look, this is the warts and all type story. I mean, we used to actually video our company meetings, which I quite liked, but the folk in the office hated it. And the reason for that was the same reason that when we started the company, I put the boardroom table in the middle of the desks so that when people come in to speak about investing, they weren't able to talk about employees as though they were things. Because one of the things that I really detest hearing is my team, my developer, my scientist, nobody owns anyone else. That's a terrible way. So we've always had this kind of, we're fairly equal. We're all cogs in a wheel. Some of them, you know, at some point in time might be slightly more important than another, but they're all cogs in the wheel. And you know, nobody owns anybody. So it's a very open environment that we work in, and for a journalist not to reach out, I think is not that great. But it could be that this journalist is fairly new to the scene, and I wouldn't like to put her off by saying, no, I think you're terrible at what you've done or whatever. But certainly, I think it would be very much in line for her to contact us now and then print the rest of the story and say, here's the actual facts. And you know, I think that would be a lot better.
I think that would be appropriate. I would encourage her to do so. I don't know the reporter that did the story. I didn't recognize the name at first, and so I'm not going to say anything about the reporter. I was just surprised by the article, and I have mixed feelings about the whole patent process, because I do see on one hand where I would like to just completely ignore the government, but I do know if I do, they'll come to my house and throw me in a cage or shoot me. And there's also the idea that if I ignore the government completely, what's that?
We got a TST.
And the other thing is, if I completely ignore the government, somebody else can say, well, they're doing something that we don't like, and use the government to come get me and shoot me or throw me in a cage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the patent and copyright process is used for self-defense, like that I have used it in self-defense for some things, as like I've copywritten songs and stuff because I didn't want somebody to use them and then say, no, I wrote that and you can't perform it anymore, or you know, you can't put out a CD or give it away because I wrote it. And it's like, no, I wrote it and I can give it away if I want.
Yeah.
So that's kind of was my initial feeling when I read this article and what I thought David was trying to do, and I think he's put a lot of thought into it. And you know, it's very hard for me yet to, I don't want to really judge anybody on, you know, it's kind of seems more like a personal decision, and it seems to me like David has done a lot of thought on it, and he's trying to do what he thinks is right anyway.
Yeah, I think that's the key. The key is like what I was saying the whole time, is stick with the vision, but there'll be mistakes. We've made mistakes, we'll make more mistakes. Hopefully we'll be very open and tell people about them so that a mistake's as good as an invention, you know. And whether we're mistaken doing what we're doing just now or not, I think probably time will tell. If we ever attack some of those patents, it would be vile and terrible thing, but it would go against. It's one of the reasons that, as well, people say you get investment. A few years ago, Skype tried to buy us, and it was quite funny because I said we're not for sale, and that made them want to buy us even more. And they couldn't get this, what do you mean you're not for sale mentality. That just didn't factor. In the UK, in Scotland, we've got this thing called Scottish Enterprise, which builds businesses. And their MO is basically start a business and sell it to an American company. That's what you're supposed to do. And this is what I'm saying. We've missed the point of business, that a business should be there to further mankind. And that sounds like some highfalutin thing, but it's not. It actually is literally what a business should be there for. And to me, this is the key, is like small teams seem to be able to hold this. We're a small team just now. Sometimes I wish we were bigger because we go faster, maybe, with code. But if a small team can seem to hold to that vision, and that's why I like the idea of these pods growing up all over the place, because they'll do things different from us. They'll do all sorts of crazy things. We might not agree with some of it. They might not agree with some of us. But as long as that vision's there, that's the important thing. That's what I was saying earlier on. Patents, copyright, company law, borders, somebody's banned something in some country or whatever, to me is the leaf on the window. Look up, the roof's blown off. It's the roof you should be concerned about, not the leaves in the window. So to me, the vision, the core vision, is looking at the roof. It's like, what are you actually here for? Does all this stuff really matter? Because this is what you're... And it is very, very difficult, because, and I think what Samantha says right enough, it's like, why should we trust that? And I think it's very hard to trust. For us, we've been doing this for 6 or 7 years, and probably more than 10 years, so probably what would look, people round about here know, because they can look and they can see David's not a rich person, he's always working. So over those 10 years or whatever, people probably locally could say, yeah, I could trust him. But I've always said to people, I could meet some stunning woman who makes me go crazy or something, So trust is something that you earn over a period of time, but it's pretty transient as well. Because something could happen in your life that makes you change your mentality. So I totally get what Suzanne's saying. We shouldn't trust any one person or any one company. We could maybe try and trust a bunch of companies more. I don't know. Ultimately, though, I think when the network's up and running, the whole thing disappears, because we don't know who's using it. So we can't enforce a patent. We couldn't come and say, Jamie, you're not building that music thing on our... Because we don't know that you've done it. We don't know our users, we don't know your users. That's the point. It's an autonomous network. That means it runs itself. That's why it's very hard to build, but when that network's out and running, we have no control over that whatsoever. And that takes away all the issues over patents and enforceability and whatnot.
What kind of a time frame do you have on releasing the actual working model of this for people to use?
Well, we're in... Sorry, Suzanne.
I'm sorry, James. Is that a question?
Oh, my question was, what kind of time frame was it before this is going to be ready to use?
Yeah, we're through testnet 2 just now, Jamie. So we started testnet 1, that completed. Testnet 2, we've still got in testnet 2 the public messaging part to do, and the public. There's a public name which gives you an actual valid public name in the network, and it also gives you a storage location, so you can have their websites and blogs and applications, full running applications and whatnot. It's like the disk version of HTTP, so you just write to a disk. And then testnet 3 will start. So we envisage the testnets would be 6 weeks, but testnet 2 is taking about 10 or longer. Testnet 3, I'm hoping, is closer to the 6 weeks or less. So I would hope in the next month or two that we're there. But we don't really work with time frames, because we switched to working. There's a roadmap on the MaidSafe site, and it shows you exactly what we're doing, and we do these weekly updates for the community so that they can see what we've done each week. And the roadmap, it allows people to judge for themselves, so they're going at this pace and whatnot, because like everything, it's with development, you don't know what the problem you're going to face is until you find it. So you don't know what all the problems are, you just code it immediately. So I would hope in the next month or two that we should be out of testnet 3 and then into beta launch.
Is this the app then that runs on your computer, or is this something that takes, like, is this like a, say, BitTorrent or something that you would run as an app, or is it something that just takes over TCP/IP and your whole network's connection? Or
it's basically an app. There's two apps. So one is a Vault app, which basically you can tell it to use a piece of your hard drive and it'll store bits of junk basically on that computer, and that's what earns Safecoin for you. Because when people are asking for that data, which interestingly is fully encrypted, but actually encrypts again onto your machine from your. So even if you're looking at it, you can't decrypt it, even if you knew what the key was. So it's just junk. So that thing runs the whole time, and then there's client applications sit on top of this network. So that's where you get things like, I don't know, your websites and your Dropbox and, you know, all sorts of basically whatever you can do today on servers and the internet, you'll be able to do on this network.
So it runs in like a browser? So it runs in like a browser or something?
Yeah, well, we're actually providing and that's what Viv's working on just now, we're providing a module so that you can start this module up and tell it what apps. So it's like a browser, but it's like a browser without the frame, if you like. And you just tell it what apps to run, and the apps will appear and they'll be logged into that network. So we're looking at like portable apps. There's about 120 of them just now. So things like browsers or video editing stuff and all the rest, all these portable apps, they'll just be able to run straight away. So.
And then this will run side by side with TCP/IP?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so it's not going to just cut off your TCP/IP and like kind of like Tor now. If you use, like say, if you use a Tails CD to boot to, you can't just go on the straight internet. Everything goes through the Tor network through Tails.
Yeah.
But with this, it'll be a dual connection.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically this will be an app that goes on your computer and it speaks to the Safe network, and those apps will all speak to the Safe network. Some people will probably do apps that cross between the Safe network and other networks, but we can advise against that, because you don't want any data coming from a Safe network to any other network, because it'll leak something. Something will leak. You know, the one thing about security is it's incredibly easy to break someone's security by knowing the smallest issue. So everything should stay safe.
Okay, Susan, did you have a final question that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I actually forgot what it was. I mean, yeah, I still feel like, you know, the basic questions of this haven't been answered. You know, again, I understand that you have the best of intentions, I understand all the intentions, but still, it means what prevents you from enforcing it? What mechanism do you have in place that prevents you from enforcing it?
Against any of the code. See, the code's GPL anyway, so we couldn't enforce our patents against that. It's not possible, because what our code's doing is covered by the GPL license. It's not, you can't enforce a patent on that at all.
Okay, so you said, like, you know, because one of your comments were like, oh, well, we're leaving the technology out for free and we don't know who uses it, etc. But that basically means that, you know, just in case the court would change, because that's also centralized entity we can't trust, and we have seen why we can't trust governments over and over again. And we can't trust the MaidSafe organization because, again, that's just an entity. It can be co-opted like any other entity. And so you said, like, well, it's open and we don't even know how you use it. So that means basically people, to know that they will be secure for the rest of their future, have to be anonymous. That's the only way to actually guarantee the security of using it. And if people have to be anonymous, that predict innovation for many reasons. Because first of all, a lot of people do stuff
You don't
for
need to be
personal.
anonymous, Suzanne.
Anonymous is not a good thing. And then second, it reduces the trust in the system. If the creators are anonymous, when it comes to, investment for startups and stuff. And but well, yes, that is what it means essentially, because otherwise, if people, people can still be trolled for the patents in case the government changes or the court changes or the MaidSafe Foundation changes as well.
You don't need to be anonymous. I don't get that part of what you're saying.
No, of course,
you
you don't need to be anonymous. But what I'm saying is that it's essentially the only way, because you said that the security for the users, the code, is that, you said earlier in a previous statement on this call that we don't even know who uses the system, and we can't control who uses the system, which is very well and fair enough. But if a person is out there with their name personally, their real name, with real address, with real everything, so that means they're still vulnerable. So it doesn't matter that you as an organization can see, because you can easily find out, right? So that means in order for people to actually be secure using the technology, they need to be anonymous, which have a lot of drawbacks for everybody.
I don't know. They wouldn't. When you've got the MaidSafe code, you can never be attacked by a patent, ever.
Well, how could you not? Because what if the organization in 20 years decides to enforce the patent?
You can't enforce a patent against GPL code.
What if there's a corrupt judge that finds a legal loophole?
You can't. That's the point of GPL. It's one of the points of GPL is to enforce freedom, like free as in beer, as they say. But if you've got GPL code base,
that's like the Constitution. The Constitution gives people rights. You well know that's bullshit.
Well, if the GPL was broken, it would be a much bigger problem. But that would be like a huge issue if you had GPL piece of code and you could use a patent to attack it, then that would be quite serious. I mean, that's basically all the laws gone upside down then. GPL is
all the laws.
It's very strict about that. It's copyleft as well. You're not even allowed to copyright stuff on the GPLs. So when you've got GPL code, it's like the ultimate in freedom, and it's also saying you can't take this code as a corporation and hide it and work on it yourself.
So is there something that prevents MaidSafe from changing the copyright license?
Yeah. Well, no, for our code we could do whatever we want, but at any point in time we said we're going to make this proprietary now, somebody just forks it and that's it. That's why having all the international pods is good. That's why we put a lot of effort into training people how to do the code. Because if we kept it, see, if you look at some projects like TrueCrypt was one that was very good for this, and you can make the code so complicated that only the people involved in writing it could ever add to it, and that's a very sneaky, under the fence way of saying we're open, but we're not really open because it's so complicated that only us people could ever understand it. So that's why we have these international pod things, and we're trying to grow them, and we want them to compete with us, because if they also know the code, and say one of them decided, well, we'll take this code and we'll put our own license on it or whatever, they'll do something, then we can't take the GPL code away. That's not possible. That's one of the good things about GPL. So we can't take that away, but we could have if everything that was there was owned by us, like nobody else had ever contributed to code or whatever, we could change that license if we fully own it. But we can't retrospectively change it. So GPL means, if you listen to Richard Stallman talking about GPL, he's really, really good. Because what GPL basically is doing is saying, use this for whatever you want, sell it, get money for it, do what you want with it. But any change you make to it, you have to put back into the community, free of charge. You're not allowed to charge to put your changes, and you must put your changes back to the community. So that prevents large corporates from taking your code base and then making something with it and not telling you about it. And GPL as well also. So the code itself being under GPL means it's safe from patents and all that sort of thing. I mean, that's where I talk about patents, I'm talking about patenting round about that code base to say, if you put a platform out, so say you had a platform, a mobile phone, and you didn't have any protection, and it was the first mobile phone in the world, and somebody went to do an app for your mobile phone platform, which you've got GPL and all the rest of it, so it's safe. And that app was Crazy Birds or whatever that thing is. Any large company could then start taking patents out to say, if you did a browser on it, if you did this on it, if you did that on it, if you did the next thing, we own it. And they prevent your people from using your phone and developing new products for it, because they just patent it.
So why didn't you just have the license and not the patent?
That's what I'm talking about. So the license would allow you to have the phone, but then
I mean the copyright license. Like, why did you have to patent it?
That's what I'm talking about. The copyright license we've got is copyleft. It's GPL. That's for the code, right? So it's a platform. So that platform can't be touched by patents, right? So that's fine. It's GPL. That's protected. But for people to build on that platform, they're going to put things onto it. Anybody could come along and patent the top of the platform and say, using this platform to do a browser or to do a music thing or to do is now our property. It'd be no problem to do that. So you would get away. An American company in America would be able to do those kind of patents. So what you've then got is a platform that nobody can build on without going to ask whoever owns the patents. So you could your platform would be protected and safe and secure from patents, but what's getting built on it wouldn't. And that's where the patent law becomes really sickening, because these companies haven't invented anything there. They're just saying, we'll take what you've invented, which is a wheel, but if somebody puts two of them on a chassis and calls it a car, we own it. If somebody puts a body on that car, we're going to patent that as well. If they put a radio in it, we'll patent a music thing in it. But if you patented the whole car, but you just built the wheel, you're allowing everybody to use your wheel for everything. If you see what I mean.
No, actually, I don't really, you know.
Right, so the wheel could never be attacked by a patent. Right,
well, you know.
So imagine you've invented a wheel, right, and you have it under a GPL type license, and nobody can touch that. Anybody can use that wheel free of charge. Nobody can ever be attacked for a patent. But then somebody patents uses of the wheel, like putting it on a car, putting it on a cart, putting it on a train. Now nobody can take your wheel and make a car or a cart or a train without going to the patent owner, which isn't the person who invented the wheel. Do you see what I mean?
I see where you're getting with that. Yeah.
If somebody patented ASIC chips for doing SHA-256 hashing, say, if that had been possible, then the Bitcoin mining stuff would have been in real problems. Even though Bitcoin's not patented. The code's free, it's GPL, it's MIT, I think. So the Bitcoin code's there, it's not going to get attacked by patents, but you just patent round about it. Patent ASIC chips, patent money processors, patent wallets. Yeah. If people did that, then Bitcoin would be crushed.
Yeah, Jamie was saying that we are running out of time, and I personally feel like I would like to investigate the issue further. Would it be possible to like have a follow-up
Yeah,
out in like maybe 1 or 2 weeks or something after the whole public debate have calmed down a little bit and we had the time to research things a little bit more in depth?
yeah, no problem.
That would be great. I would like to
That's
do
awesome.
that too.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then,
do you want to read that, Jamie, and we'll do it.
yeah, I think
David,
so. We could take questions from people that will watch this afterwards too, seeing we're doing this live and it was short notice, and then have a public Q&A.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, be good.
I also want to say, David, kudos to you for like being in on this call. You know, as I said in the beginning of the conversation, I face a lot of FUD in the media, and I know what a pain it is to handle. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't bother me after our crowd sale. Geez, I became immune.
Yeah. So
Our crowd sale was a disaster. Well, it was a brilliant disaster, but it was a disaster, and I've seen the worst in people then.
right. So I totally sympathize, you know, and kudos to you for coming online and taking the time to answer our questions and our concerns and everything. That's really cool, and I know what a shit show you are probably going through. But yeah, it would be great with a follow-up call.
Yeah, absolutely.
If obviously Jamie is the host and makes the call, but so yeah, that's cool, awesome.
Right, excellent, Suzanne. Nice to meet you. In virtual mode.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll set that off offline, and if you want to stay on for a second after we go off the air here, I want to say a few things. But I want to thank everybody for joining us, and especially want to thank David for being a brave guy and coming on at such short notice, and Susan too for coming on, and John for coming on, and just pretty much listening in. He had messaged me and said that he was going to look into some of these questions more too, and he was going to have some more questions later on. So I think a follow-up would be a great idea. So I want to thank everybody again, and we will see you later. Bye-bye.